Hi and welcome back to yet another video with squash and zucchini. We have harvested about 15 kilos here and I'm going to wash it all and then I'm going to use it in 3 different recipes today. And one of the recipes is for a relish, and I'm also going to use some cucumber in that relish. So next off I'm going into my greenhouse and harvesting a few of these really white cucumbers. I don't have so many cucumbers this year, so I'm just going to use what I have and then the rest will just be the zucchinis. And it added up to about 1.4 kilos of cucumbers. So I just washed them off and then they are going to dry along with the zucchinis. And then next off I'm going to make something called Ganoush, but I'm using the zucchinis instead of the eggplant. And I collected 4 of the biggest zucchinis here and we're going to grill them on our barbecue to make them really soft. And it doesn't matter if the skins are getting blackened. That's just okay because we're not using the skin. We will scrape out all of the insides. So that is what we are going to do now. They are going to get really soft before they're finished, so they are getting about 1 hour on the grill and we're just looking at them once in a while and turning them around so they will get soft all over. And while we are grilling these, Holly's having a little snack and watching us work. And now they're all really soft and you can just peel off the skins. Right now they're really hot, so I'm using this tongue. But if you just waited for them to cool off a little, that maybe would have been easier, but I couldn't wait. So I'm just peeling off all of the skins and then I'm putting them into the sieve so that the water can drain off. And now I have removed all of the flesh. The remainings are just the skins. So I'll just put this in the refrigerator to yesterday. You can already see how much water has drained, but tomorrow there will be even more. And then I'll continue with this project. Now I'm going on with the zucchinis, and I'm going to grate these ones so that I can make some keto zucchini buns out of it. And then in the end I will make the relish. I'm also going to drain off this zucchini so that the buns won't get too wet, especially because it's a keto bun, so it can be a little difficult to get the right consistency. So now I'm just putting in all of the grated zucchini into my cheesecloth, and then I'm letting it drip a little, and then I'll squeeze out the rest of the water so that the zucchini will get really dry in the end. And now I'm ready to go on with my relish. So I'm starting with the onions. I will link the recipe that I'm kind of following in the description box, but I'm not following it 100%, especially because I'm using mostly zucchinis and not so many cucumbers, and I'm also not using sugar. I'm using erythritol so that it's keto friendly. And now I'm just chopping up all of the onions, and then I'll put it in a tub and drizzle some salt on top of it. And I will do the same with the zucchini and the rest of the ingredients. And I'm using 2 of these white tubs where there's about space for about 10 liters of vegetables. And I'm putting on the salts to draw out some of the moisture. And I will also keep that in the fridge for tomorrow, where I will go on with the relish. And both the zucchini and the cucumbers and the other vegetables that I'm going to use, I will also just chop up in the food processor. Last year I grated it, but I feel like I like it more when it's chopped up into smaller pieces, just like the onions. So that is what I'm going to do. And like I told you in the beginning of the video, I had about 15 kilos of zucchini, so there's a lot, and this will take some time for me to process all of this. That is also why I am using several days to do it, both because the recipe calls for it, because of the moisture has to be drawn out of it, but also because I can't manage this much in just one day. So this first day is mostly the prep work. I'm also using some red peppers and half of a yellow bell pepper and a whole green bell pepper. You can use as much or as little as you like. I especially like the red color because of the zucchini is mostly white, yellow and green, and then the red will pop out with some more color in the finished product, so that's why I'm using the red ones. Unfortunately, it's not from my own garden. They're not ripe yet, but in this recipe I'm not using that much compared to all of the zucchini and the cucumber, so that's okay. And then maybe if I make a later batch, I will have some from my own garden as well. I'm also using a few chilies, and these are from my greenhouse, so at least that is my own. So all of these vegetables filled up these 2 tubs of 10 liters, so that is a lot. Now I'm just going to cover them with some foil, and that's also so I can stack them on top of each other, so that they won't take up as much space in my refrigerator, and I'll put them out there so that they can just drain off the moisture until tomorrow. And now I'm going on with the zucchini buns, and first off I'm putting in some eggs. And I'm also putting in a top of cottage cheese, and I think that the recipe calls for 150 grams, and this is twice the amount, so I'm making a double batch. This is some melted butter, and of course I'll also be linking the recipe down in the description. I have this immersion blender that I'm going to blend all of it so it's nice and uniform. And now I put in all of the really dry zucchini that I shredded in the beginning of the video. And then I'm using something called po fiber. It's fibers from potatoes. And I'm using 500 milliliters of it. It doesn't really weigh anything, so that is why I'm measuring it out this way. And then I'm mixing it around and letting it soak up some of the excess moisture. Because of that it's fibers, they really soak up a lot of moisture. And now I'm just putting it into the egg mixture and mixing that around and letting it soak up some more of the moisture, and then I'm ready to make the buns. It is a really soft dough, so I'm using a big ice cream scoop to make the buns, so they actually also look like buns. If I make them again, I will probably put in some more of the fibers because I felt that they were a little too wet. I'm also putting some sunflower seeds on top, and then I'm going to bake them. And this is how they look after they have been baked. and I felt that I really baked them for a long time, maybe twice as much as the recipe said, and even though that I did that, they didn't take on a lot of color, so I don't know why. Now I'm going on with the baba ganoush, and I have all of the grilled up zucchini that I have drained in the fridge overnight, and I'm putting it into my food processor. I'm also using some tahini. I will link the recipe down in the description that I have kind of looked at. I have not followed it at all, but that's just so how you can get an idea of how and what I did. I don't like tahini that much, so I'm a little afraid of putting in too much, so I'm just starting out with about 1 tablespoon. Now I'm putting in some salt, and I'm using a lot of different spices, and you will see that I'm tweaking it all of the way because I wanted to find the right taste for my taste buds. This is just a little olive oil. And this is some of my homemade chipotle spices. And this is some chili flakes. I'm also putting in some smoked paprika. I like the smoke taste also from the chipotle chilies. This is some garlic powder. I think it would have been better if I had used some fresh garlic or maybe some smoked garlic. This is some black pepper. This is just some kind of a barbecue spice blend. As I said, I'm just trying to tweak it so it's like I like it. So I'm just trying a lot of different kind of spices. I'm also putting in some lime juice to get some of the acidity. And then I'm going to chop it up and make it into a puree. It will look a little like hummus, but it's definitely not the same taste of mouthfeel. I feel like chickpeas make it dry in your mouth, and this is a lot more moist. And I had a taste, and now I'm putting in some garam masala, and I'm also putting in some of the other spices again to make it a little more tasty. And I'm putting in some more salt. This is some coriander. I'm also using some of the balsamic glaze because it makes it both a little sweet and a little acidic. And then I'm just blending it up again and tasting it and tweaking it a little more, and I'm doing that for a while. And this is how it looks now. It took me some time to get the right flavor as I liked it. So if you're making it, just try your best to get it like you like it. And this is how it looks. It really looks a lot like hummus, but as I said, it's a lot more moist. And this will not keep in the fridge for a long time, so I'm putting it into 4 smaller containers and freezing it, so I have it for the coming weeks. And the rest of it I'll put in the fridge right now, so we can have it the rest of this week. And this is how the buns turned out. I think that they got a little flat. Maybe the next time I will use some kind of mold to put them in so that they will rise a little more. But they are really tasty. And here I just put on some butter and some chicken lunch meat. And it was really tasty, a little moist inside of the buns. So as I said before, maybe I will put in some more of the fibers next time I make it. And now it's the next day, and this is the rest of the grated zucchini that I used for the buns. So I'm just using the rest of it in the relish. And now it has been sitting in the fridge overnight and has drawn out a lot of the moisture. So I'm putting it into the cheesecloth, and I will drain off as much as I can. Now that I have squeezed out a lot of the moisture, I'm going to begin with cooking the relish. And I'm using this really big pot. There can be 18 liters in it. And first off, I'm going to make the brine. And I have these 3 kind of vinegar. The first one is with a mango flavor. The second is a wine vinegar. And the third one is just a plain white vinegar. And I'm using some mustard powder and some mustard seeds. I also have this spice blend for pickling, and I'm just using a little of that as well. I'm using some turmeric. I like the color in the relish, but I don't like the flavor so much, so I'm not using that much. And that was just some peppercorns, and this is the erythritol that I'm using instead of sugar. And I'm beginning with I think about 750 grams of erythritol, and then later on I can put in some more if I need it. I'm also using some xanthan gum instead of cornstarch. So this is how it looks, and I'm just mixing it around, and then I'll put it on the stove and turn it on, and then when this is nice and hot I will put in all of the veggies. I mostly use recycled jars and lids, and I'm just putting on some boiling hot water now just to sterilize it. And they are all clean, of course, but this will just give it a little extra sterilization before I'm using it. And now the brine is getting hotter, and I can put in the veggies in just a moment. I'm also using something called atamon, and that makes it so that it will keep longer without water bathing it or pressure canning it. In Denmark there is not a possibility even to get a pressure canner, so we can only water bath in Denmark. I am putting the atamon into some water, and I will flush it around into the jars and then put it into the next jar and so on. And it just helps it to not get moldy and so on. I can also water bath this, and I would usually do that, but because I have some bigger jars, we will not be using a whole jar in one sitting, so just to make sure that it won't go bad, I am using this atamon. When I'm making tomato sauces and things like that, where I'm using a whole jar, I will just water bath it and I won't use the atamon. You can do whatever you like to. Now it's hot and steamy, my brine, so I'm putting in all of the veggies. I'm putting in a little at a time, and then I'm mixing it around in the brine, just because it's such a big pot, so it can be a little difficult to get all the way down to the bottom, and it's important to do that because else it will burn in the bottom. So I also don't have as much heat on it as I could have had if it was a smaller pot. But I'm always doing the big things, always making a lot when I'm in the kitchen. So I have about 12 liters, I think, here. So we will have relish for a long time. I'm making about 10 times the recipe here. So if I would have just made one recipe, it would only have had to be boiled for about 10 minutes. But because it's such a big recipe, I have to mix it around a lot and it will lose some heat. So I think it took me about an hour to get everything heated through. And you can see it's kind of glassy looking right now, and that means that it's ready to get into the jars. And I'm also using some of the atamon in the mixture. I'm putting in 1 teaspoon per liter. And this is a tablespoon, so that's the equivalent of 3 teaspoons. And then I'm giving it a really good mix to get it distributed all around in the pot. And then I can begin to fill my jars. And I have this really big thing here I can put into the jars and fill them up, because it's a really thick mixture. I'm using a spoon to debubble it a little, and just to get it down into the jars. And then I'm using a clean paper towel to clean off the rims before I put on the lids. And then they will seal just like if they had been water bathed. So it's not always necessary to water bath everything, especially if you are using atamon. It only works if the temperature doesn't get over 100 degrees, so you cannot use both atamon and water bath. You have to choose one of them. And this time I chose the atamon. And now I emptied out that whole pot of relish. And we got about 20 jars filled with relish, and I have this half one in the front, and we'll just use that up in the coming days, so that is not a problem. And of course we had to try it on some burgers, so I made some egg white bread, and we had it with a pork roast that we had smoked, and then with some of the relish, and it was really good. But this is all for this time, and thank you really much for watching. I hope you'll subscribe, and you can always go and follow us on Instagram at Vestas Farm Life. Bye bye.